When Nicole Sodoma was in law school, she was voted the least likely student to have children. Fast forward to 2021, and the mother of three sons and successful entrepreneur has a tattoo to symbolize the lullabies she sang to her children, and is the founder and managing principal of the thriving Charlotte, North Carolina based Sodoma Law. If there is one quote that summarizes Nicole's approach to everything in life when you ask her how she has accomplished so much, she states in a matter of fact way, "Because I could." Learn more about Nicole's unique story, from how she can still sell you a copier or a fax machine, and why she and her colleagues call themselves badass gladiators. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole.
Thank you, Tess.
We are very interested in your story because we understand that you are a very successful business person. I know that your firm has experienced double-digit revenue growth over the last 12 years. So I wanted to hear a little bit, actually a little bit more than 12 years. I wanted to hear more about Sodoma Law from and your own unique money story from both personal and professional perspectives.
Well, I have to say first, I'm standing because as a litigator, we are trained to stand when we make our arguments. So if you do see me moving back and forth, feel free to say, stand in one spot, Nicole, and I will do exactly as I'm told.
Thank you.
So we all have to have some patience with me. My own story, oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin. I am not, that's what we're going with, right? You said my
Yes.
story. Okay.
Your story. So personal and professional is fine. You can start way back in high school if you would like.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm from a small town in South Carolina. Most of my family still lives there. When I was in high school, well, growing up, I'd say I came from a family of dentists, and I was not thinking, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I want to be a lawyer. I never heard, oh, Nicole, you argue so well. You should be a lawyer when you grow up. I went to high school with the idea that I was going to follow the dream of going into medicine, which was my mother's dream. I didn't know that until later. They gave me an opportunity to graduate high school early. So I graduated when I was a junior at 16 and decided that it was going to take a long time to get through college and medical school and probably some specialist medical profession. And so I better get started. So I did. It was a great decision, except when I got to college, I realized that my mother actually wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't know really what I wanted to be. So I switched my major as a junior from biology and became a communications major, which was right up my alley. It wasn't until after I graduated college that I actually realized what I wanted to do. And I remember working in, I was selling copiers for a company in Charleston, copiers and fax machines. I still can give you my sales pitch on both. And although, gosh, we don't use fax machines very much anymore, do we? We had a scanner then. It was a long time ago, but we still had scanners. Anyway, I called her and I asked her the question of what class did I talk about most often when I was in school, and she told me media, First Amendment and media law was something that I always called home and talked about. And then I looked to my left and I looked to my right in this place where I was working selling copiers, and I actually enjoyed it. And there was a gentleman off to my right. He was a tall fellow and he had lots of children. And here I was, you know, barely 21 and working alongside him. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he and I do the same thing. And he's responsible for an entire family. And I'm just responsible for my dog and me. And I thought that would be so challenging as an adult. And so I applied to law school, got in, landed myself in Alabama, sight unseen, didn't go to orientation, just decided that was where I was going to be. And that was how everything started. So now, fast forward, I am 21 years into practicing law. Almost all of those, 19 of which I have done family law, and I opened the law firm 12, almost 13 years ago.
Excellent. And can you talk a little bit about the fast expansion that happened and maybe why you decided to start your own firm?
Why did I start my own firm? because I could. It's the interesting thing when you, as we teach our children, and the things that I heard were how to have a career, um, not a profession. So it was, we looked at, I mean, I remember hearing accounting and medicine and law and things that you could actually have um, a business. And I never thought about it like that. I just thought it was, that's where you grow up and you have a profession. So when I started a law firm, it was really because I could. I just had my first child. He was 9 months old. And I kind of started the law firm thinking that I would work and could work just as hard as someone who didn't have the responsibilities of a parent, but I knew that I could do it differently than my peers and my colleagues and my male counterparts. So the law firm, I remember telling my then supervising attorney that I thought it was really best for me to go start a practice. And that was maybe, it was a Monday. Because I always think that's the best time to quit a job is on a Monday. So it was a Monday. And by Wednesday, he had me escorted out of the door. And so I had no idea what to do. I called my then husband and said, hey, can you call the bank? I think my clients are going to come with me. So that's how the law firm started. I had my first consult the next day. My paralegal came with me. We had a fish that we named Jerry, like, Jerry Maguire. That fish's bowl is right over there because he died not that long later. But anyway, she came with me and we had a consult the very next day in an office that I fell upon basically, and I actually forgot to bring her a chair. She never let me forget that. I forgot to bring her a chair for the consult, and she had to sit on an end table from my couch. The law firm grew from 2 to 12 in the first 12 months. I had not read a single business book. I knew how to be a really good lawyer. I had a lot of compassion. I understood that in order to be really good at my job and a really good advocate, I needed to know as much as I could about everything. And that fell into the way I started to run the practice. In those first 12 months, we went from 2 to 12 people, my paralegal and me, and we had 10 more people knock on the door. I didn't run an ad. I just had lawyers and paralegals, and they just knocked on the door and they said, what are you doing? We think it's going to be really cool and different. And that is how the practice started. We were in 2,500 square feet. There was one bathroom. We all knew each other's habits. We started as all women. That was what we were known for. That was not by design. That is just what happened. It happened to be that a lot of us were moms, and we all knew how to get the job done, just not in a regular 9 to 5 schedule. After, that's the first 12 months. So it kind of all started from there.
And something you said struck me about your responsibility as a mom and how you wanted to do the same job, I think, as everyone else in the office that you were previously. And what can you tell us a little bit about what the culture is like at your firm today?
I like to, we call ourselves badass gladiators. Again, that term may be a little overused these days, but we are a candid, compassionate, tenacious, um, and I try not to be too salesy when I describe it. And the way those words came about was I was interviewing a lawyer, and this was probably a decade ago. I was interviewing a lawyer she was outstanding. I mean, she was the kind of litigator that you just knew that you wanted to work your case for you. You wanted her to be your voice. And I wasn't sure if she was a good fit. I didn't know, being a good lawyer, being a great lawyer, a great litigator doesn't necessarily make you a good team member or a good leader. And so I called one of my trusted judges at the time, and I said, this person is interviewing to practice with us. And there were already 12 people there. We had 3 lawyers already at the time. And she said to me, if she's not compassionate, tenacious, and smart, she does not belong with you. You won't make it. And so she was incredibly smart and incredibly tenacious, but she was missing the compassion. So I would describe us that way. I would also say that you're not going to find us in suits. I have a crazy braid in my hair. I did that 45-year-old stereotype, get a tattoo. So it is a different group of people. We are still mostly women. Our practice does have very brave men now. There are now 19 lawyers. We have, I opened an office in a county that is very close to where our main office is in Charlotte. We opened there in 2015. We opened a third location in South Carolina in 2017. We just opened another office about 30 minutes north of here in 2021, and we're 19 lawyers and just about 50 in total.
Well, you've made tremendous accomplishments in a very short amount of time, so I congratulate you on that. I also have a personal question: does your tattoo say "Badass Gladiator"?
It doesn't. It is it doesn't. Although I might have to rethink the next one, but don't tell my mother that I would consider it. Actually, my tattoo is when I was in law school, I was voted least likely to ever have children. If there was such a vote, I was told that was mine because of my intense ambition, I guess. And I, over the 12 years, almost 13 years that I've had the practice, I've had 3 beautiful boys. And because I'd never babysat a day in my life, the only lullaby I knew was a Bob Marley song, which is 3 little birds. And so when I reached my stereotypical age to get a tattoo, I have 3 birds on my arm and a butterfly that I wear around my neck, also on my arm.
Well, thank you for sharing. And those tattoos sound fabulous. But I'm glad we have an idea now for the next one that you might get, and I won't tell your mom. So shifting gears just a little bit, I was wondering, obviously this profession has been male dominated for a very long time. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about challenges, obstacles you faced, and how you've overcome them in this world.
I did not know that there were gender challenges. They didn't stare at me. I didn't hear from them when I was growing up. There were not stories shared with me. Apparently, I was living under a rock somewhere. When I opened the law firm, I started to reflect on when it was apparent and when I shoved it down, really. I remember being a young lawyer and my supervising attorney suggesting that he allow one of our clients to put his hand on my knee in order to negotiate a better deal. I did. I didn't think it was a big deal. Looking back, there's so many things I would tell my younger self about that. But we live and we learn, and we share the stories so that we can make change. I remember one of my most vivid memories, once I recognized the gender differences, was not so much about my practice of law, but more about the running of a business. I remember standing in a building that I owned in Charlotte, and there were 2 men in front of me, and one was a more senior lawyer, and the other one, he had a couple of years on me. And the older lawyer says to the other lawyer, and I'm standing with them in our semicircle here, and he says, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting my own law firm. What do you think about that? Do you know anything about starting a practice?" And the other guy says, "Yeah, I don't know. I've always worked in a practice. I have no idea what you do." And he says, yeah, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do because I think I'm gonna go do it. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, ask me, I'm right here. And they looked right over me. So I was so surprised and disheartened, but that was really right in my face. So
Yeah, that's an amazing story. It's almost like they just didn't realize that you were there, and you were kind of invisible to them, which is a shame. I'm sure you could have given them a lot of wisdom. Or the one gentleman, do you have, now that you've seen some of this and kind of realized what it can be like as far as gender differences, do you have any advice for women in the work world as it relates to kind of these gender issues that they might face?
don't shove down those feelings. Uh, Listen to your gut. Your intuition is there. It's so easy to second guess what you're feeling and what you're thinking. I'd say listen to that voice. And if you're not listening to it, then the person next to you might also not be listening to it. And so my advice, I liked growing up and believing that there were no gender differences because it made it really easy to say, gosh, why don't I have that same opportunity? So I didn't see it. And when I did see it, it made it really easy to say, this doesn't feel right. We should change it. So standing by and being a bystander, if you will, I would say be more of an upstander than a bystander.
That's excellent advice. You mentioned a little bit earlier about giving advice to your younger self, and I will ask you that question. Apart from what we just talked about, what other advice would you have given your younger self, given the experience that you have had now?
What advice would I give myself? I would tell my younger self and my older self to breathe. I remember when I was first married, my husband came down the steps and he had half of a goatee. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what happened? Where's the other half of your goatee?" And he said, "Nick, it's been like this for 2 days. Where have you been? Like, look, be present." And that was an eye-opening moment for me. So I would say to breathe and be present. Um, Teach your children about money. There are not enough courses. There are not enough moments in my childhood or in my children's childhood where we stop and we talk about finance and money and how we spend and how we should save. I remember my dad once told me to buy any car I wanted because I was always going to have a car payment. Not the advice that we get from our financial professionals or in anything that you read. I listened to him and I ended up with a lot of debt that I then had to clean up. So, not the greatest advice, but we learn. And I wish that there had been more opportunities then and now to be teaching our children younger about money. So that would be. I didn't take a finance course. I didn't read a book about business. Everything I learned was from listening and reading in my adult life and trial and error, really.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you about teaching our children at a much younger age about money. And thank you for sharing that personal story about buying a car. And since you mentioned it, this was on my question list too. You had mentioned a couple of times that you didn't have that business experience, but you've clearly been a very successful entrepreneur. How did you learn? What did you do to become an accomplished business person?
My theory was I had to learn how to do it myself. Then I needed to hire somebody who knew how to do it really well and wanted to do it. So everything from using QuickBooks to hiring an HR manager to building our social media platforms and our business development editorial sheets. I write a lot for national journals. Everything that I ever wanted to do in business, I wanted to first do it myself and then find the right people to do it. And then it was a right people, right seat measurement. Um, if I had to, how I don't really have, I guess I'd say there's some secret sauce to it, but really it's that mindset approach. And I know that we talk about and read about all the time fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I really do have a growth mindset in the sense, at least I would argue that I have a growth mindset in the sense that I really feel like I am the only person in my way. And so if you go into any circumstance, you are the only person in your way. You bring the weather, whatever your attitude is about it is going to reflect in the success of everything you do.
Well, thank you. Those are definitely excellent quotes for us to remember. I've been writing a lot of them down. I wanted to ask you too, since obviously you deal, I know that your law practice deals with many different topics, but you focused and started on family law. Do you have any advice for women out there who have either recently been through a life change or just in general regarding how they should manage their wealth?
If you're thinking about, I do. If
Thank
you're
you.
thinking, yes, I do. It's very stereotypically the women that I work with, the women who are going through change, divorce, they're working on changing their estate plan. We're having these conversations about all of these journeys and these different chapters in their lives. And so often and stereotypically, they don't know a lot about finance. And I can say that in when I was married, the reality was I wasn't in charge of my finances. I was focused on the practice and building the business um, and all things related to home wealth and private wealth was all somebody else's shoulders. And so I've learned just as much as my clients have learned over the last couple of years. But one of the things is if you're going to get remarried, and I believe so strongly in marriage, I love the idea of marriage. Um, and I don't know that everybody is supposed to get divorced that gets divorced, but if you like the idea of marriage and you think you want to get married again, I think considering a premarital agreement is really important. It's going to make everybody's life a lot easier in the event your marriage doesn't work out. We get insurance for life, we get insurance for cars, we get insurance for health, we get insurance for our jewelry, umbrella insurance, but we don't want to get insurance for our marriage, which is so interesting because it takes two to say I do and one to say I don't. So why would we put all of that control in this unknown thing? People change over time and not necessarily do they change at the same speed and in the same way. And as much as I love marriage and believe in marriage, that is something that we cannot control because it takes two people to say I do and one to say I don't. So having that premarital agreement in place so that when things are right and you talk about what your ultimate goals are, it's in writing and it's stuffed into a drawer. Because if things go wrong, reducing that conflict, especially if you have children, is so important. The other thing is if you are married and things are not going well, there are things called post-nuptial agreements, which work a lot like prenuptial agreements or premarital agreements in that they are agreements when there is conflict most often, or if you've inherited property or you've come into some type of wealth, having those agreements in place in the event something happens to your marriage so that there is a guide, essentially. It's a guide for how you have to separate because you don't have a choice in that. So while you do have the opportunity to have a choice, you need to take it so that it doesn't cost you or so that you don't have those unintended consequences on the other side in the event that ever happened.
That is very helpful advice, especially this notion of the postnuptial agreement, which makes complete sense, but something I had not thought of before.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask you a couple more questions. One is regarding being an entrepreneur. What advice do you have, or what, I guess, thoughts on inspiration can you share with women who may be entrepreneurs or thinking of going off on their own and becoming entrepreneurs?
There are two quotes that I've lived by for the last several years. and I can attribute one, but not the other. I probably need to look that up. One is the one I cannot attribute is if you always do what you always did, you're always going to get what you always got. Now, I'm sure I've butchered that from whoever originally said it, and hopefully I'll get some emails or text messages when you guys Google it. But I always love that because we're always evolving. As a business, we're evolving. As people, we're evolving. I mean, coming out of 2020, COVID-19, we've evolved so very much. So for entrepreneurs, for business owners, that is a really important thing to remember. And the second is a quote from Viktor Frankl. And I might butcher this a little bit too, but if you don't know, Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, and he just wrote wonderfully. And one of the things that he said is between stimulus and response, there is space. And in that space, there is the freedom to choose wisely. And again, I might have butchered it, but gosh, he goes on to talk about growth and freedom that you can create in that space. So I think about all of the times that I had a stimulus, someone quit, our numbers were unexpectedly dropped, or my son once, one of my boys ran up against a fence with his face, and that was a stimulus. And you have this time to determine how you're going to respond. It is a choice you make. It is a thing. And so with all of those instances, there's such a big difference. It could be so many different outcomes, and your response is what's critical. So choose wisely so that you can continue to have that great freedom of choice.
Well, thank you for reminding of that one, particularly the last quote in this day and age when everything seems to need an immediate response and everything is so in your face and everyone's competing for the share of your mind. I think you did a really nice job of paraphrasing both of those quotes. So thank you. I appreciate that. One final question before we leave. Is there anything you would like to impart with anyone that might be viewing this or hearing this bit? Any final words of advice before we conclude?
I would say that there is probably somebody who believes in you more than you believe in yourself, and to accept that and to take it in and love it and be there for it, and then to run with it. So yeah, I'd say that.